Okay, I forgot to do that. Okay, now I will, now it's recording. Thank you.
Thank you.
So B2C is business to consumer and B2B is business to a business. So for example, if Gateway contacts a local business to provide its services for disposing of what we shred at Gateway. So all of that transaction takes place electronically, even though the service is physical. So, but that's one business serving another business needs. Similarly, when Gateway provides services to you guys, then it is a B2C solution. But B2C is so wide that B2C itself has several categorizations. One of the categorization of B2C is E2C, which is employer to the consumer. Means I, being an employee of Gateway, is getting some electronic services from Gateway. They'll be employer to me as a customer of the employer in the form of an employee who's getting served. So customer or consumer, the idea is the one who is getting served. And business is the one who is serving. Similarly, a branch of the e-commerce or e-business is also another branch called G2C. Can you guys guess what is G? What could be G? No, it's government. So when we file for taxes, for example, is an implementation of G2C. So when you file your taxes electronically, or when you get your refund. So IRS services, for example. Similarly, there are other services that the government provides us. For example, whitehouse.org. Sorry, not gov. Whitehouse.gov is the website which provides you, another electronic service that comes from the government to us. This all e-business solutions do not have to be two-way traffic. Some e-business solutions are only one-way traffic, means they are providing us with information and we are just taking the information. And sometimes the e-business solutions can be two-way, where they give us something and we give something back. For example, if I go to nasa.org and NASA says, now org means it's a not-for-profit organization. So that's why they have the .org in their web URL. So the nasa.org says, okay, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you got to provide us with your email. So now when I'm providing with them with my email and hitting the submit button, that's a two-way stuff because they gave me a form and I'm giving my email. So it's a two-way conversation. So the two-way conversation happened probably 25 years ago or so, but in the original form of the internet, it was always one-way conversation. That's why we used to call that one Web 1.0. That means there were websites out there like Wikipedia, for example. It just gives you information. You cannot contribute to it. Of course, I'm just giving an example, or a dictionary, like a Merriam dictionary out there. It's Web 1.0 implementation that you can see a word and its definition. You can't contribute to it. You cannot change anything. Or Oxford dictionary. But then Web 2.0 came about, and that gave those dictionaries a second layer, which is now you can actually search for words, as opposed to, what the original form was? They would list letters A through Z. You click on letter, and then you go down in the list, and then you look for that word. But now you can actually search for a word in the search bar. That was made possible through Web 2.0. We're still living in Web 2.0 for the most part. We're still having a two-way conversation. Web 3.0 is not there yet, but it probably will be there soon. And Web 3.0 is more like custom solutions for everybody. So everybody will get their own customized solutions for their daily needs. And that's what Web 3.0 will be all about. For example, if you want to plan your day based on your preferences, it will plan it for you. It will figure out things for you and will provide the services to you. So that kind of stuff is Web 3.0. But anyway, so in this chapter, we'll be looking at ethical and legal issues in e-businesses besides these two items. And the learning objectives of this chapter includes the 8 common types of electronic businesses and describe the various online services for B2C and for B2B and look at ethical and legal issues. There's one more electronic service that we get and the implementation is called C2C. C2C, consumer to consumer. Can you think of an example of C2C? eBay, okay? Or people selling under Facebook, people selling individually under Amazon. So it's basically consumer to consumer service. That's what the C2C is. So when we start digging deeper into chapter number 7 under the introduction, it says electronic commerce is the process of buying, selling, transferring, or exchanging products, services, or information through computer networks, including the internet. So it doesn't always have to involve money. It just is a transfer of goods, services, products, and stuff like that. But typically, as a common man or a common person, we assume that commerce means money. It's basically electronic business. That's what basically it does. So e-commerce is transforming all of the business functional areas as well as fundamental tasks from advertising to paying bills. Now, what are the functional areas of a business? I think we talked about it in the earlier chapters. Those are the BFAs. For example, in a typical workplace, you may have a functional area called accounting, another functional area called finance, another functional area called operations, another functional area called something else, training. So those are the business functional areas. So communication within the corporation and communication from corporation to its partners, to corporations to its employees, to corporations to its partners or customers, all of these are considered to be different implementations of e-commerce. So it is important for you to have a working knowledge of electronic commerce. Now, a lot of you may already have some form of working knowledge of e-commerce. If you've ever bought anything from the internet or have ever sold anything on the internet, or if you are doing electronic banking, if you are doing stock trades or bonds or any kind of those electronic services, if you have ever interacted on Blackboard, if you have ever done any paperwork electronically, all of these will be falling under this one big umbrella. So everybody has some form of exposure to it. So in this chapter, you will study about different types of e-commerce, and here's a list of them. And this is where you will see the business to consumer and business to business and consumer to consumer and business to employee and government to its citizens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones are listed right here as the major types of electronic commerce. Okay. Now, when we go into the overview of e-business and e-commerce, just how important is the electronic commerce, especially in these times? Industry analysts estimated that the US retail sales 4 years ago was approximately $5.3 trillion. Do you think that number would have come up by now?
Yeah.
By the end of 2021, that number was approximately 6.6 trillion. Okay, 6.6 trillion. And that's just in the US, guys. We're not even looking globally. However, there are speculations that it may go up, or some speculations are it may go down. It just one speculation is that it will be somewhere between 4.8 to 4.95 trillion in 2022 because of several different factors. And worldwide, of course, worldwide, they're going to be exceeding 27 trillion. So let's say if worldwide it is 30 trillion and 5 trillion comes from the US, how much out of the whole world are we contributing to this? It's 1/6. That's a lot. 1/6 of world's retail is getting generated by one country. Amazing. Okay, amazing. Where do you think, out of all the 7 continents, where do the most number of people live? Which continent? Oh, you're muted, Angelo.
Oops. Asia.
Antarctica. I'm just kidding. Yeah, you're right. Asia. What percentage of the world's population do you guys think lives in Asia? Roughly. 20%, 30%, 40%. What did you say?
A quarter?
Quarter? 25%?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I would say something maybe like a third, 30.
30%. Okay. Yeah. Do you know the world's most populous country in the world?
Would that be
Is-
India?
No,
Is that China?
China. And second is India, very close. Between the two of them, and if you include maybe the neighboring country, Pakistan and Bangladesh, I would say they're close to 3 billion just in those 3-4 countries. Out of 8 billion, you know, little over 1/3 of the world's population is in 2 countries or maybe 3 countries. And then we got Indonesia, we got Malaysia, we have, you know, US is also out there. If you add it all together, I mean, probably, you know, between the 5-6 countries in the world, the most populous countries in the world, that's where lies half of the world's population.
I still remember when 6 billion was a huge deal in 1997.
See, here is the number. Asia, 60%, almost 60% of the world's population lives in one continent because that's where the most people live. The environment and agriculture and growth and less epidemics and less pandemics, people thrived because the weather is not as harsh. The plains are not as harsh. I mean, American plains are one of the harshest plains if you look at it in terms of the kind of weather we have to deal with. Like, look at Canada, you know, that's over 50% of North America is Canada, and 80% of Canada is unlivable without modern technology. So, and then there are parts of US that are next to Canada, like Alaska, which is the largest state in the US, which for the most part is covered in snow. And even if you look at the Midwest, all the way down to the western coast up north, I mean, like half of the year, we are chittering and chattering. So, and if you go down, you know, we get tornadoes and we get all sorts of crazy weather all year long that you don't hear about in other parts of the world as much. So, you know, the population growth was humongous, plus a lot of other reasons. Those areas thrived over the period of time. So that's why a lot of the developed countries have turned to those countries for cheaper labor. And those countries did not invest it as much in machinery as we did because they have manpower. They have people to work. And they have used that power to do stuff rather than investing in technologies. So anyway, the bottom line is that when you're doing commerce these days, the reason I brought that up Now we're talking about world being a global village. You're dealing with countries, not just companies within your country, but countries for your needs. Now, why do you think we have so less cars in the Midwest all of a sudden? Oh yeah, absolutely, Angela. Yeah, the world population around World War II, or even prior to World War I, was like maybe 1 billion. I don't think so. It was 1 billion around that time. Yeah. Now we are growing. Yeah. So that's basically brings more problems when we go electronically globally, because if you break a law, where will you go? Where will you going to take these guys? If somebody is dealing with me and I'm in US and they are in probably South Korea, where will I take them? If there is a contract breach, or if they, if there's anything that needs to get some court attention, where will I take them? I can't bring them to the US courts. I'm not going to go and fight them in South Korea, because there is no law like that in South Korea, for example, for what they break. So where will I take them? Probably my only bet would be to take them in the International Court of Law. If there is any such law in place, I'll be able to fight it. So there are lots of things that we have to keep in mind when we are going global, to see how we will be doing business. That's why a lot of the time we go global, we try to hire local people from within so that they understand everything a lot better. And then we bring some of our flavors into the company and get the things running. Because of this reason, because we were dependent on certain corporations outside of the US for certain chips that go in car as mandated by the US. Now that we are not getting those chips the way we should be getting it, the number of them as we should be getting it, the reason is we're having the problem. So there's a supply demand issue going on in the world. So the types of e-commerce, one is business to consumer, one is business to business, one is consumer to consumer, then you have business to employee and business to government. We briefly talked about these. Besides that, we have mobile commerce. Mobile commerce refers to e-commerce that is conducted entirely in a wireless environment. An example is using cell phones to shop over the internet, or a lot of the time when you're buying stuff, for example, you're playing game and you run out of goodies and you spend $2 and get another 3,000 goodies, and that's your mobile commerce. Okay. People do it a lot, like in Candy Crush, or they get some goodies when they send other people invites, but when they run out of that, they spend money if they're really, really eager, or they wait for another day or something like that. So social commerce refers to the delivery of electronic commerce activities and transactions through social computing. Okay, now what is social computing? How do we define social computing? It refers to the system that supports the gathering, representation, processing, use, and distribution of information across social collectivities such as teams, communities, organizations, and markets. It's something that goes around sort of kind of in communities. And a lot of the time people are dependent on these kind of services, which are considered to be social. Like, for example, there are neighborhood sites. There are local events, commerce, sharing of information about events. And there we have apps for that, right? There are apps for almost everything that you can think of. Then there are conversational commerce, which is in the form of chat commerce, which refers to electronic commerce using messaging and chat apps to offer a daily choice, often personalized for a meal, product, or services. Like, a lot of the people are doing their business on WhatsApp. WhatsApp was down for a few hours in the US last year, I think. And it was a disaster. It was only down in the US. And that was one afternoon, and I'm driving to work, and I parked my car on Kenosha campus, and I open WhatsApp, and it's just not opening. Like, what's going on? I tried everything, it just nothing, no response. Then I went on the internet, and it said, oh, the WhatsApp is having some network outages in the US only, and it took them a couple hours. But fortunately, it was that late in the day that the market was not as much affected. You know, individuals do a lot of that stuff versus businesses, and some businesses also may do that. But anyway, moving on to these e-commerce business models, and here is a list of them. Go ahead and read table 7.1. Once you guys are done reading table 7.1, then move on to read the major e-commerce mechanisms. And give me a green check when you guys are done reading the table 7.1 and major e-commerce mechanisms. So for those of you who are done reading, you can have a look at this world population growth map from 1700s to the year 2100, as reported by our worldindata.org. So we have grown 8 times in the last 200 years. 800% growth.
You can tell where the baby boomers were.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And now it's on the verge of decline, as you see. And the growth rate was 0.04 was the average population growth rate between the 10,000 BC and 1700s. And it is declining to 0.1%. So that's why in the next 80 years, the population growth will not be as it's been going on. So probably will slow down to hitting approximately 11 billion.
Why do you think that is?
You know, at one point in time, the work group was not very diverse. It was very, very specific. So a lot of the factors have changed. So as a result, many people are becoming part of the workforce. And that baby boomers phase is getting over.
Do you think it has a lot to do with like same sex and stuff like that too?
I don't know, but overall, there is a shift in family structure. People are more focused about, okay, you know, we'll have less kids, but give them quality life versus having too many kids with less quality of life, especially in larger cities. That's a trend changing across the globe.
Oh yeah, I can see that too.
And
Yep.
rural areas are different. But again, you know, we'll see. And then we also need to keep in mind that certain world countries like China, for example, in last 80 years, they took the initiative that 2 people can only have 1 kid, right? Now they have made some changes in the laws because now most of the people in China are older people. There are very few young people in China. The overall population is huge, but that comprises of mostly older people. So who will take care of them?
Mm.
You know? So
Yeah, even here in the United States with the baby boomers.
So that's basically the biggest problem. That's why they have allowed 2 kids now in China. But think about it. Prior to that, there were 6 grown-ups on 1 child because the mother and father were the only kids of their parents, right? And the father has having like his own parents, and the mother has own. So 6 people taking care of 1 person. So 1 person has to, in return, take care of 6 people.
That's a lot.
Yes, because they only allowed 1 kid in China, Ismail, that you can only have 1 child. That's it.
I had a friend from China. His parents had him and his sister, but his sister was never registered because if they knew about the sister, so you know they would allow or charge their parents or give them a ticket or something. If I recall correctly, and then he said, so he'd learn school at school, and then he would come home and teach his sister at home.
Wow.
So she's actually very smart too. But then later on they did her paperwork and stuff and got it situated. So her birth certificate has a weird number on it because they couldn't tell anybody that she was there.
Yep. And they took all those initiatives just to control the population, and they've been trying that from last 70, 80 years, and still they are the most populous nation in the world. And the way India is growing in population, soon India will surpass them. India is very close to China.
You think it's the weather?
Because they don't have any laws in place like that as China does, that you can only have one child.
Yeah.
So, and then India's population is 1.4, touching 1.4, and China is 1.41, very close.
Wow.
Billion we're talking about, billion.
That point one is still a lot though.
Don't they have a longer life expectancy over there as well?
Yes, yes. Life expectancy in India is low compared to China. That's true, you know. However, their quality of life has now improved tremendously in the last few years, but still, I don't think so. Their average age has hit mid 60s. It used to be mid 50s before. In India, see, it is now hitting 69.9. In India, it used to be in 50s before. So probably the quality of life in India is a little bit better now, but in China, it is 77 years as life expectancy.
Is
And
it here in the US?
in the US is around the same as China, though, by the way. So China and US are very close because China has 77.1 and US has 77.3. I think the highest is Japan, 84.6.
It's because they make infinities, that's why.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And then even Canada is 81.8. So anyway, so coming back to the services is how we started this. So over the period of time, because of this shift in population, there will be a lot of changes that we will see in the world. One of the things that we see that researchers are working on very rigorously is to take away the language limitations. I know now in the US, there is a big push for people to be bilingual, especially people to know Spanish besides English, especially in certain fields. In fact, there are different classes that have been designed for medical practitioners to learn Spanish. There's Spanish for medical practitioners kind of classes are being offered through different programs. So those kind of things are there in place. However, the other part of the world is doing a research where you should not have to learn the other person's language to communicate with them. We will have devices in between that will do the translation for us, not only in text, but also voice. But we'll see how far that is.
A lot of like European countries, don't most people speak like three to five different languages
Yeah.
fluently?
Yep. Yeah. And in many parts of the world, that is the case. Like, for example, even in Canada, you have two languages that are prevalent, English and French. Not every Canadian has to learn English, and not every Canadian has to learn French either, especially the French provinces. Everything is in French, and some choice schools are there where you can learn English if you want to. Similarly, in the English part of Canada, most schools are in English, but then there are certain choice schools where you can learn French and English fluently. But again, it's not required, but those people have at least, an opportunity in their school systems. Here in the US, we don't have anything in place officially, but people learn different languages. And then we have people coming in from other countries who know other languages. So we do have bilinguals, but again, you're right. Citizens of countries, for example, if you go to France, can you find people speaking English? Maybe there are people in France who can speak English. Similarly, when you go to United Kingdom, You may find bilinguals in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. England, you probably may not find that many bilingual people in terms of, the native people. But in Scotland, you will find people who would speak English and Scottish. So yeah. And then of course in Europe, if you go to the neighboring countries, I mean, like people who live on the border, they usually speak multiple languages. Where there's a lot of tourism, people speak multiple languages. So yeah, and some parts of the world, for example, going back to Asia, like for example, if you pick Pakistan and India, uh, their countries are divided in provinces, not states, and each province has at least one language, and some provinces have multiple languages. So a person learning English in the school is learning Urdu to communicate with everybody else in the country, because that's a common spoken language on the street, and then has a local language, which is a provincial language. And if that province has multiple languages, then sometimes they learn multiple. So at least 3-4 languages are common. And some people may know more. Anyway, let's come back down to page number 217, where we see how credit cards work. So here we have a person doing a transaction. It's a customer. Provides the credit card information to the merchant. The merchant will take the credit card information, because merchants can't hold the credit card information. By merchant, I mean Walmart, Target, Amazon. They can't hold the credit card information. Rather, they would have to send that information to the clearinghouse, through where it goes to the customer's bank. And the customer's bank, which could be a credit card bank or whatever bank the customer has a credit card from, would have to then clear the payment, either approve or deny. And that information will travel through the clearinghouse to the merchant, and another information will then go from merchant to the customer that, yeah, your credit card transaction was approved, by the way. Okay. While this is happening, the customer's bank will talk to the merchant's bank and will transfer the funds, and will notify the customer that I have transferred so and so funds from your account to so and so account. So all of this is happening on every transaction that's going on. And so many transactions happen, right? On minute basis, seconds basis. So that's what basically is the process. Okay. Now, benefits and limitations of e-commerce. I will let you guys read these 2 paragraphs here on page 219, benefits and limitations of e-commerce. Okay, now comes business to consumer electronic commerce. So in this particular case, we have businesses that are providing their services to consumers. And one of the examples mentioned over here is Amazon. Another example is Walmart.com or Target.com or BestBuy.com. And all of these .coms are out there providing business to consumer solutions for everyday needs. So we have the electronic retailing businesses out there. Now, some of these businesses are 100% online like Amazon. For example, can you think of any other business besides Amazon that's 100% online? Amazon is not 100% online, by the way, now. You know why?
They have their like service centers in like Kohl's and different stores and stuff like that.
They do have some physical presences in some of the stores like Kohl's, right? But they actually have also opened stores. You know that?
No.
It's by the name of Amazon Fresh.
Oh, the food.
Yeah, it's part of Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they're not 100% online for all the services, but for the most part. And then, Ismail put Newegg is another example of 100% online. Or there is a Wayfair that's online. So there are certain online only businesses with no brick and mortar storefront, but only electronic storefronts. Also, there are some companies that do business under the search engines like bing.com/shopping. Now, Microsoft is not selling those products. Somebody else is selling this. Microsoft is bringing those items to you. Similarly, Google does the same thing. So those are the businesses that are out there providing you with some electronic buying and selling experiences. Despite e-tailing's increasing popularity, many e-tailers continue to face serious issues that can restrict their growth. Three significant issues are channel conflict, order fulfillment, and personalized pricing. Now, that is a big problem these days. So the channel conflict, which is the alienation of existing distributors when a company decides to sell to customers directly online, that could be a problem for some of the businesses. So that's one of the reasons that some businesses can thrive and some can't thrive that well. Okay, so then, so that's channel conflict issue. Then we have order fulfillment. You should be able to fulfill the order in a timely fashion. Now we have some products through Target, for example, or Walmart. They require weeks to be shipped. They are listed on their website, but those products are not readily available in Target's warehouses because they don't sell them very often. So what Target would do is when they receive the order, they will place the order with the merchant or supplier who is probably somewhere else in the world. And on the next shipment, they will ship that item to Target's warehouse, and then they will be able to send it to you. So there are certain things of that nature that these other businesses would sell, which they don't warehouse. So, I mean, like if you are in no dire need, you're like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm okay with receiving this in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But on the other hand, you'll be like, no, I'll just go elsewhere and buy something else. So that's another problem. And then the personalized pricing. So if the same business is in multiple countries, for example, they would have to come up with pricing for that place. So for example, if I am looking at Amazon.com, now that's Amazon.com in the US, right? So let's go Amazon.co.uk. I think that'll be for the United Kingdom. And notice the flag changed and everything else changed. And I'm looking for an iPhone 14 Pro Max, right? So notice I'm getting my pricing in pounds. not in euros, in pounds, okay? So I have Apple iPhone 12 Pro Max. Okay, let's grab an item here. Unlocked. Okay, Apple iPhone 11 Pro Max, 564 pounds. So what's the currency rate? Pounds to dollars. It is 1.16. So if I were to grab my calculator and multiply 564.56, oops, 564.56 with 1.16, I'm talking about 654 US dollars. Okay, let's grab that. And let me go to the Amazon.com in the US and maybe search for something like that. And that is for $589. Do you see that? After the conversion, I'm still finding it a bit cheaper in the US. Again, you know, somebody else is selling it. I don't know what the starting price of the same product in the UK is. Maybe the kind of taxation Apple has to go through in the UK hypes up their price. Maybe the living index is different in UK. I mean, like, there's so many parameters. Just, similarly, if they have to go and sell the same item in India, for example, Amazon.co.in, I hope it's a valid website. Maybe there isn't a website for India. I don't know. There should be. I think Amazon is also in India. But then again, you will find a different pricing structure. Yeah, that's okay, that's in India. Okay. So now let me search for a similar item in India, and I don't know. There isn't any exact same item, but the pricing is probably, you know, based on whatever is local. So that's another thing that they have to be careful about, that to provide, you know, the local pricing, the personalized pricing, the standardized pricing, competing with the local businesses. If you're selling something and local businesses would be selling it at a cheaper price, then you're more likely to lose. How much does a McDonald's burger cost? An average.
No clue, but I'm gonna say like $7 or $8.
McDonald's burgers? No, that's too much.
Not the dollar ones.
No, I mean, on the average, I'm saying, and don't quote me the most expensive ones. Don't quote me the least expensive one. Is it possible to get a burger on the average for $4 or $5 on the average? Yes. Okay. So now, what is the minimum wage in Kenosha? Is it $4? No, right? It's far more than $4. So a person is $7.25. That's the minimum wage.
7.33.
Minimum wage is $7.25 in Kenosha.
25. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So if somebody's making $7.25 an hour and makes, let's say, $60 or $70 in a day, whatever, can that person afford this burger? $4 burger? Yeah. And then he also, or she also has an option for a dollar menu, right? So can this person afford a dollar burger who's making $7.25 for 4 people? And again, your answer will be yes. Okay. But if you go out in the third world countries, the burger starts at 500 local currency and the person is making 100 local currency an hour, or maybe 60 local currency an hour, or 120 local currency an hour, that person will not spend half of his day's money on burger for one person. They can't afford McDonald's on a daily basis. A lot of the people in the US can afford McDonald's on a daily basis. In those countries, only middle class to upper middle class can afford McDonald's. And high class, the rich class, can afford it every day. There's a big difference. Even middle class can afford McDonald's every day, maybe once a month. Because going to McDonald's with a whole family will be like 5% of their salary will go in one meal. That's a lot of money. So when we look at those places and we want to do businesses in other places, we got to be careful about, okay? Why do you think at one point in time, drive-thrus failed in Russia? Miserably. Exactly. Ismail got it. There were no cars. People couldn't afford cars. Who would come through the drive-thru? Nobody, except for a handful of people. Okay. In some parts of the world, for example, in China, Victoria's Secret failed miserably. Failed miserably. Why do you think? Do Chinese don't use Victoria's Secret products? They do. But they had this buying habit of not spending too much money on the garments that nobody can see. You know what I'm saying? That's what their thought process is. So it's like, why would I spend $50 on something that I can get for $5 and nobody can see it? So it's just not worth it. I would rather buy a nice outfit. That's the thought process. Businesses like these will not be successful. Okay. So you got to go in to the right market with the right mindset to sell the right product. And that is difficult for corporations when they go international into global markets. So that's why business to consumer has its own challenges. Even though a lot of the money out there is spent in business to business transactions are 85% of the overall e-commerce transactions. Okay. So now, for example, if $6 billion is spent, $6 billion is spent in business to consumer, sorry, 6 trillion. I mean, it's $6 trillion are spent in business to consumer. Then we're talking about maybe another 80 trillion dollars are being spent on business to business. Market is huge for business to business, because if Gateway decides to change all the computers at Gateway, they're not talking about $2,000. They're talking about maybe $500,000. You know, $500,000 to upgrade all their labs and all their faculty laptops. They're talking big numbers. And $500 million, sorry, $500,000, households don't spend that kind of money on yearly basis. So that's why business to business is totally different deal. Moving on to ethical and legal issues in e-business. Okay. So ethical issues, many of the ethical and global issues related to IT also apply to e-business. For example, privacy and job loss are two of the factors. Always remember that the world that we are living in these days, there's always an economic shift in jobs. If one sector loses, the other sector gains. New fields are produced, new areas are explored. That's why you constantly see different tracks in education that we never saw before. Back in 80s, you could only get a degree in computer science. And that degree would probably be given to you from the School of Business. Engineers would not even consider computer science to be worthy of being part of the engineering department. They would look down upon computer people and say, you're not even engineers, even though your title is a computer engineer. So that thing has changed over the period of time. Now you specialize in computer science. Gateway has how many tracks in just computer science? We got software developer, we got web developer, we got data analyst, we got computer support specialist, we have networking specialist, we have cybersecurity, 6 tracks. 7th one is in development, which is AI, artificial intelligence. So 6 to 7 tracks within IT alone. Okay, now over the period of time, of course, we don't know what other tracks will come in other areas, you know? So we don't teach basket weaving anymore. We are not a driver ed school anymore. We don't teach people how to do filing at a workplace anymore. We don't teach how to type efficiently on a typewriter anymore. Those days are numbered. So things have improved. Things are going into, so as a result, you do notice that when companies come into business, sometimes they break rules, laws, look for loopholes, and they play the ethics game until they're caught, right? So many legal issues are related specifically to e-commerce. When I was going to my undergrad program, the business school books are very expensive, you know. Back in 2005, I'm talking about, some of these books would be around $200 to $250, or even up to $300 back in 2005, 4, 6, some of those old times, right? Older than now. So I ran into this website. I still remember this website. And this was the name, tamanna.com. Okay, now, do any of you know this word, tamanna?
No.
No, you probably don't, because none of you know the language that I know where this word is being picked from. In that language, tamanna means wish. Okay, so it's like wish.com. The name was so suspicious to me. It's tamanna.com, and you're doing business in US, and the book cost is 1/5 to 1/6 of what the book retailers would be selling in the US. I mean, like, they were giving me $250 worth of a book for $40. I mean, like, that just doesn't seem right. And they had all the books listed that I needed for my business program. So I started doing a little search on them. And I started, and back in those days, you know, things were not very open. Not very many forums were out there. So I was able to locate these guys, that the address that they provided on their website is actually in the middle of nowhere. It was a big, massive ground, probably some kind of a plain field, or out of, you know, those little areas that are left around business park districts. It was like nothing was there. They just randomly put some address from somewhere in the Southwest states. I don't remember the name of the states. I'm like, oh, you're fraud. Definitely. And then I learned about that business in the next few months. Some of the cases that happened with the other people who ordered the books, and the books never arrived, or the book arrived in from some foreign country, and the quality of the book was like horrible, or the book just never arrived. I mean, all sorts of crazy stories. And then the website was gone. So those kind of things people would do to steal somebody's money, and you're like, oh, the price is so good, and people would go for it. So there would be fraud on the internet a lot of the fraud on the internet, especially that prince from Africa who has billions of dollars in the US, right, needs them to be transferred to him. Man, if you're that filthy rich, why don't you fly over here and get your own money? So the US Federal Trade Commission regularly publishes examples of scams that are most likely to be spread by email or to be found on the web. And there are some tips that your book introduces to you. I want you to go over these bullet points here on page 232. Another thing is cyber squatting, which is now illegal in the US, but was not illegal before 1999, where you will take a domain name in hopes for somebody to get rich in the future. And then when they will need that domain name, you will charge them a lot of money to give that domain name to them, which is very specific to their company or to that personnel. And that was made illegal in 1999. And it permits trademark owners in the US to sue for damages in such cases. However, some practices that could be considered cyber squatting are not illegal, although they may well be unethical. One of the practice that is being discussed in the book is called domain tasting, which lets you register several different websites, and then you would put out blogs on them for a limited time, which is within the free time. And you will run several ads on them because you have built reputation with the search engine through your algorithm that your pages are ranking pretty high. And then before you hit the pay period on that registration, you sign out. I mean, like you basically disable the account and remove the page. So you have several of these pages running at the same time, and you're making money off these sites, and you're not really paying anything to anybody, and you're utilizing their resources. So yeah, that's domain tasting. Then the intellectual property is protected by copyright laws and cannot be used freely. This point is significant because many people mistakenly believe that once they purchase a piece of software, they have the right to share it with others. And, you know, that's where they run into problems. So copyright laws are extremely important. Intellectual property rights are extremely important. That's why when we go to images.google.com and I'm searching for an image for an IBM, for example, and here are all these beautiful pictures that represent IBM, I cannot just freely use them whatever I like. I need to go to probably tools and go to usage rights. And then I'll say, okay, give me all those that are under Creative Commons licenses or commercial and other licenses, whatever, you know. And then when I go to Creative Commons licenses, notice all the good ones are gone. Because IBM's logo is copyright. You cannot just use it without IBM's permission. So there are some non-copyright ones available here, but not the fancy ones that you were looking at before. Okay. Now, what I would like you guys to do is scroll up to the beginning of the chapter and read the opening case. That's on page 209. So as you are done with reading this case, you can write or speak about your input. So if you are writing, you can use chat to write it. Otherwise, you can tell us, what do you think about this particular opening case? So yes, they are still in business, zenefits.com. Now they are providing solutions for businesses, especially the HR department. Do you think their older model had any ethical issues?
Yeah, they didn't, they were selling insurance in different states that they didn't have licenses for.
Was there any undue pressure on employees or forcing employees to have unethical practices?
Yes, they tried selling them as fast as they can at the end of the month because of a $10,000 broker implementation fee, but they never really charged anyone for that.
Uh-huh.
And the company also said that they're acting under the owner, Parker, I believe his name is, that has licenses in all of the 50 states. So they technically don't have to have a license in that state to sell the insurance, but that's false.
Yeah, and the fact that they found ways around the state mandates and the state statutes stating that required 52 hours of class time.
Yeah,
even
that
though it
was
didn't
funny
take
to
that
me.
long to do the course.
Okay.
The owner just got bored one day and was like, man, I'm gonna make a Google Chrome extension that gets around this.
Anybody else has any more thoughts?
I like that they took away the employees. Well, they had to cancel their vacation time, and whatever, but then they end up have to pay them.
Now I want you to go down to the chapter's closing case. And that would be down on page number, I think 242. That's where it is, or 241 or somewhere. Yeah, it's page number 238, closing case. Read the closing case. And this is a little bit of a longer closing case. It's Walmart versus Amazon. So in the next 3-4 minutes, I will be sending you guys into your smaller breakout rooms to discuss your reaction to this particular case. It's around 7:05. Okay, guys, so I am posting the question in the chat that I want you to discuss in the group of 2. I have set up 8 groups of 2 here. And these are the 2 questions that I want to discuss. I want you to discuss in your group. And I'm opening the rooms now.